Okay, so we're going to talk about one of the most famous moments in American history. But here's the thing. I bet the story you know isn't the real story. February 1st, 1960, Greensboro, North Carolina. I mean, that date, that place, it's practically etched into the history books, right? A total cornerstone of the civil rights movement. And the story we've all heard, the one passed down for decades, is just so powerful. Four brave college students from North Carolina A&T get denied service at a segregated lunch counter, so they just sit. A simple act of defiance against Jim Crow. They're known as the Greensboro Four. Iselle Blair Jr., David Richmond, Franklin McCain, and Joseph McNeil. And look, they are absolutely heroes, no question. But what if their incredible act of courage wasn't the start of the story? What if it was just one piece of a much bigger, much more calculated plan that's been kind of hidden? Yeah, the popular version says this was totally spontaneous. A late-night chat in a dorm room that just boiled over into this historic protest. But the truth? Oh, it's so much more interesting. It's less about spontaneity and way more about strategy. So to really get to the bottom of this, we need to rewind. Let's go back a few months and head to a completely different college campus, right nearby. Get this. The plan wasn't hatched at A&T, the men's university. Nope. The real architects, the strategic masterminds behind this whole thing, they were the women of Bennett College, a historically black women's college. It all started with them. And look, this was anything but spur of the moment. This was a full-on campaign. I mean, they did their homework. They researched other successful sit-ins. They didn't just pick any old lunch counter. They chose Woolworth's because it was a national chain. Talk about aiming for maximum impact. They even trained for it, practicing nonviolent resistance. And the timing? They waited until after winter break on the advice of their college president to make sure all the students were back. This was strategic, through and through. So when February 1st finally came and the plan was set in motion, wow, the effect was immediate. It wasn't just a spark, it was a wildfire that spread way beyond that one town. Okay, look at this number. 70. Just 70. It might not sound huge on its own, but trust me, in this context, it's everything. It represents a massive shift. Because that's how many other southern cities had their own sit-ins by April. We're talking just a couple of months later. That single, carefully planned protest in Greensboro, dreamed up by the women at Bennett, it literally set off a chain reaction across the entire South. And this quote from Charlie Cobb of SNCC just nails it. He said, before seeing these sit-ins, civil rights had been something grown-ups did. That's the key right there. This changed everything. It put the power to fight Jim Crow directly into the hands of young people. It was a complete game changer. So that leads us to the big question, right? If the women of Bennett College were the strategic brains behind this incredibly successful movement, why don't we know their names? Why has their story been almost completely erased? Well, it's complicated. There's no single easy answer. It's a mix of a few things. Some of it was a deliberate choice by the activists, some of it was how the media covered it, and a lot of it had to do with the societal norms of the time, which just didn't see women's work as leadership. You can really see the difference here, side by side. On one hand, you have the popular memory, a spontaneous protest by four men. It's a great story. But then you have the recovered history, a meticulously planned campaign organized by women. The simple story is compelling, yeah, but it leaves out the most important part, the strategic genius behind it all. So let's break that down. First, there was tactical silence. The Bennett women themselves chose not to correct the record. For them, the unity of the movement was way more important than getting individual credit. Then you had the media. Reporters flocked to the story. And who did they focus on? The men at the counter. And finally, you just had the general culture of the 1960s. Women's organizing was often seen as helping or support, not as actual leadership. It was just invisible. But wait, there's actually another twist to this story. Another layer that gets even more complicated. And it tells us a lot about Greensboro itself and how it chose to remember this moment. Okay, so on the fourth day of the protest, something else happened. 3 white students from the nearby women's college decided to join the sit-in. And this set off a whole different kind of firestorm, one that tapped into all these deep-seated fears about race and gender. To really get why people reacted the way they did, you have to understand this idea called Greensboro's progressive mystique. Basically, it was this belief that being polite and keeping things civil was more important than actually fixing problems. So from that point of view, the protest was the problem because it was disruptive, not the actual, racist segregation that caused it in the first place. And this quote from the chancellor at the time is a textbook example. Listen to what he says. He's worried about the tensions that threaten good relations. Who's he blaming here? The protesters. He's not talking about the injustice of segregation. He's worried that these students are rocking the boat and ruining the supposed harmony. A harmony that, let's be real, only worked for the white people in charge. And boom, just like that, the whole story changed. The media saw white women protesting with black men, and it just ignited all these racist and sexist fears. That became the sensational new headline. The conversation shifted away from the core issue of segregation, and in all that noise, the foundational strategic work of the Bennett College women got buried even deeper. Which really leaves us with this final question. Because getting the story of the Greensboro sit-ins right isn't just about correcting the history books. It's a reminder that history is never really settled. There are always more stories, more voices that have been pushed to the side. It makes you wonder, right? What other stories have we just accepted as fact, and whose crucial contributions are we still missing?